Hey, thanks. Welcome to the panel about education and comics. And we are going to just start with we're going to introduce ourselves in a little, like briefly, and then go into a more explicit introduction about who we are and what we do in a little bit. And by the way, I know nobody can see me because I have this computer, so I drew this. So just imagine that's me. And I'm Josh Baer. I'll be facilitating things. And do you guys all want to introduce yourselves really briefly?
Hi, I'm John Mejias. I make a comic called Paping, and I've been an art teacher in New York City for the past 16 years.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me? I don't have to yell. Okay, I'm Roxanne Feldman. I'm the middle school librarian at the Dalton School, Upper East Side, right in the city. I grew up in Taiwan and read manga all my life, and it's kind of interesting to see the changes in graphic novels and comics in a school setting in the States.
Hi, I'm Tracy Fedonchik. I'm a 5th grade teacher at the Dalton School with Roxanne, and I worked with Roxanne and others to bring graphic novels to kids in a way that where we were teaching illustration and writing and plot and reading comprehension skills. So that's how I integrated graphic novels and comics into the classroom.
Awesome. So first question I have is kind of expanding what we just did, and I want to ask you, what have you accomplished as a teacher? What are you after? And what do you want for your students? And what effect does working with this population have on your own work as a professional? Because I think we all do projects in addition to our teaching work. John, you can go first.
Well, I started teaching in the Bronx. I was there, then I moved to Long Island, then I taught in Manhattan. Now I'm back in the Bronx again and I'm teaching high school, and it's a high school they've never had art before. They all came to my room and they said, what are we gonna do here? What is this? What's an art program? So, could you click on that hamburger drawing? Yep. So on the first day when I draw something about you, this is one of the first drawings I got from a high school kid where they went to John's Beach, and I said, all right, this is what I have to work with. I gotta need to know my audience a little bit. I asked him and he said he just liked to doodle. He liked to draw fun stuff. So I told him about surrealism. He didn't know what surrealism was. And it was just an interesting, fun start for me in the school. I'm starting with sketchbooks with them. A lot of them don't know what a sketchbook is or ever was. I give them sketchbook assignments. And we're making journals about our lives, and for that kid we're doing some surrealism. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Do you want me to go through more of the images?
Sure. This is the same kid who he draws a lot of stuff like this. I get a lot of this from him, and I thought it was interesting. The funny thing about this is he actually didn't think about how many fingers there were in a hand. We were drawing our hands because they wanted to learn how to draw things more realistically. So here in this art program, I don't have any art supplies yet. I am the art program. Whatever I do, whatever I bring them is what the kids learn about art, and this is my start. And it's a challenge, and I love it.
So you have to bring your own, these are your own markers, your own pencils, I suppose?
I stole paper from the copy machines, and I brought my own pencils. I've ordered supplies, and they're on their way, and this is typical for New York City public schools, and I'm used to it, and we're gonna do the best that we can.
Look at these slow bullets. It looks like they're like carefully, methodically exchanging bullets down here.
Yeah, on the other end of the spectrum, in the very same class, this is a kid that is 15, and he draws better than I did when I was 15. He's making a comic about, the assignment was to make an idea for a children's book. I've written a couple of children's books, so I brought them in, and we talked about how to speak to children. So this is the other end of the spectrum where this kid is just a natural artist. I brought brought him a bunch of comic books that people that he'd never heard of, just from my comic book collection. And again, it's quite a spectrum that I'm working with, which is the other end of the spectrum.
Do you find, since they don't, this is the first time they've had art training, received it from a instructor, so do you experience resistance? Do you experience resistance to the whole notion of art?
I have art fear from about 25% of them. I used to have math fear when I was in high school, so I can relate on that level. But about 25% of them just don't want to draw, and I ask them to write first, and I help them, and I show them reference pictures, and I'm just very encouraging, just to tell them, you don't have to be afraid, you're not going to explode. Everything's going to be okay.
That's intense.
Yeah, but the other 75% love art, and they think it's the best, and I had to write a lot of rubrics to explain how they're going to get graded, because they still don't understand what it means to have an art class.
So I'm going to read this. There she is, dozing off into her dreams. She awoke and she seems quite distressed. Something's wrong, she cries out to herself. She leapt out of her bed and ran to the kitchen. And this really caught my eye, the way that she's dealing with the blanket floating over the bed. When she stopped and said, "There's nothing here," but then she heard, "Well, I'm here," said a man with 2 heads and 2 hands. So
That was cool.
He's a very imaginative kid. He's always drawing. He's that kid during all his other classes was drawing, so he's very happy to be in my class where he's allowed to draw. He's very happy that it's something that he can do in school now. That he doesn't have to be shamed anymore.
It's freaking great.
It's amazing.
It's
Well-
really good.
Let me take a technical moment and figure out if we were going to have this PowerPoint presentation. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's going to help. Once you guys start to answer the question,
Yeah,
then while
yeah,
we're
We
setting
will.
this up.
Yeah, we will set it up. Okay.
So, as a classroom teacher, the cool thing is that we get to see kids, or in many different ways. I'm not just the art teacher. I could be the art teacher, but I can also be the reading teacher, math teacher, history teacher. So what's really great about seeing kids in art is how they embrace it or run away from it. And during the graphic novel unit, you definitely saw kids who were embracing of it, so excited, as John was saying, like, this is a great time, finally I get to draw, and just eating it all up. And then other kids who were so anxious about the entire process and about what it means to draw. And we've been doing this program now for the last 5 years, and it's really evolved. And if the PowerPoint gets up, oh, it did.
Yeah.
The first iteration of it was very highly thought out and highly structured, and it was within the realm of adapting a novel to the graphic novel form, and through that process, teaching and kind of unpacking graphic novels and how they're made.
Can I jump in for
So
one-
yeah,
just
so
one?
then Roxanne and I started collaborating.
Actually, I want to jump in. I actually want to respond to John's comment a little bit because when I was listening to him working in a public school in the Bronx versus we feel, sometimes I feel guilty that we have so much because in our school, our art department has like 12, 14 faculty members, and they do anything from modeling to Henry, what do you do right now in 4th grade? You're doing clay work. They're doing clay masks, and they do soft sculpture. They learn about, Georgia O'Keeffe. They learn in 4th grade, and they learn about Calder in 4th and 5th grade. So, it's so crazy that our kids have had so much, art exposure
Yet,
before 5th grade, and then all the way through high school. So I'm still wrapping my head around your comment. But this is just so you know that these are kids who mostly started at our school from K till 5, but they haven't really used graphic kind of representation in a more, we call it like more academic, maybe, environment.
Right, and when we first started this program, graphic novels were always looked with a suspicious eye by educators. It was, I remember when I taught third grade, before I taught fifth grade, and Bone first came into the classroom. And there were a lot of teachers who were like, this can't be an independent reading book. It's a comic. And, Roxanne and I have always, Roxanne even before me, but been believers in this genre, and that there are so many moments that are so filled with value and are so rich, and there's so many opportunities for kids to express themselves within this genre, as well as learn about crafting characters and plot and dialogue, that and also house. In our school, we do a lot of social emotional curriculum, so talking about facial expressions and what does that mean. So there's just so many. It's just such a rich curriculum that can be made through the juxtaposition and the joining of text and visuals. And so we've really explored it. It first started as a very structured adaptation program, or unit rather. And so Roxanne and I really collaborated, and Roxanne taught me a lot about. We use Sandman as the educational tool for me.
We didn't share Sandman with
No.
fifth graders, just so you know. It just, okay, just to clarify, we didn't
horrifying.
read Neil Gaiman's Sandman with fifth graders.
No, but Roxanne was working with me on that, and to understand the process of how Neil went through the drawing and the writing and the drawing and that whole process really enriched my understanding of graphic novels. And so the way we started it, so you can go to the next slide, Josh. So what we did was because we were adapting a novel to the graphic form, we started with close annotation and reading of the text. And the kids really read it differently when they had a frame that was visual. So all of a sudden they started noticing all of those in an explicit way, what was present in the novel and then what was not present, what was being inferred by them as readers. So as they were constructing meaning, what did these characters really look like? And what was cool is during this collaborative process that each kid had a different understanding of what the town looked like, or what the kids, the characters in the book looked like. So this was really cool. And so we talked a lot about this. So how does this happen? So the first, going back, yeah. So we took, not the best graphic novel out there, but we took Artemis Fowl, because it's an adaptation of Ian Colfer's novel. And we picked up through it, what is present in the text and what was created by the illustrator. And so the kids really got to see that when you're adapting a novel for the visual form, that there is a lot of creativity. There's a lot of interpretation that's happening. And so the kids, I was hoping, would kind of be freed up by that. So grounded in the text, but then also freed by it.
You can see Tracy always uses many different colors. The different colors always mean different things. So it's visually, talking about this is a character color, this is a setting color, this is a maybe emotion color when they talk to the kids about this.
Sounds really good for teaching the kids organizational skills.
Yeah,
Definitely. There's a lot of organization involved. Yeah.
Especially when you're doing something like this, where you're really trying to teach a genre and have the kids immersed in it. And I've gone back and forth on that. Now the most current iteration of it is much more freeform, where the kids are bringing more of themselves to the process. But I think, as with teaching, as with learning, it evolves as you evolve as a human. So, so the next one, Josh, you can go to that. So this is the Sandman, but I love that model as far as coming up with a script, and then from the script interpreting that into visuals. So that was kind of the model that we did with the kids. So they turned Tuck Everlasting, which is a book by Natalie Babbitt, into a script that would include visuals, a la Neil Gaiman.
And one of the things that we talked about was the collaborative nature of the traditional comic book and graphic novel world. I know there are more and more people who are writing and drawing and coloring and lettering all on a computer by themselves, but we actually really enjoy the idea of collaboration and compromises and brainstorming, like both almost additive, but also sometimes, you have to compromise because your vision may be different from somebody else's vision. And that is really important in our school when we talk about social emotional learning, which is also how do you work with other people, because the world is full of people who you need to work with. And so we use the model of every kid is a writer and every kid is an illustrator, but they are writing and illustrating different sections. So I will be illustrator for the first chapter when somebody else is writing that chapter. And then I will be the writer for chapter 2 and somebody else is drawing.
Right.
So in that way, we kind of get them to work collaboratively.
And we wanted the kids to overcome any of their fears. So getting back to John's point about, kids coming to an art class with real different comfort levels and passions for or not for art, the kids really feel that, and it's a real intense worry that they can have about drawing sometimes. And, it's not uncommon for kids not to know how many, I think knowing fingers on hands, but like knowing how something really looks and then knowing how to draw that. So the cool thing that we've done over the years is that we've actually worked with another person at our school. His name is Dan Music. And he has actually, his hobby is drawing, and he's now turning his avocation into a vocation, which is really cool for him. But he comes into the classrooms now, and he helps the kids overcome some of these worries by talking to them about stick figures and the power of the stick figure and how you can communicate so much emotion and action in a stick figure, and that realistic art is just one type of art, and that there are many different ways to express character or setting through different methods of drawing. And we actually also use Scott McCloud's. Yeah, we'll move faster, sorry. So we'll go to the next slide. And this is just what Roxanne was saying, how we divided things up. So we can go to the next one. And then this is us talking about what characters actually look like, which was just a fun, excellent conversation for the kids to start to appreciate different perspectives.
That's it.
All right, and then I don't know if anybody knows about the Grimace Project, but it's a really cool website where there are different degrees of emotion, so sadness, happiness, anger, calm.
And it's on a sliding scale, so it's like from 0 to 100%, and the face just changes as you slide. And you can combine different emotions. So I say, like, what does hope look like? And there's no hope in there. So people say, some joy and a lot of fear. And that actually look like somebody who looks hopeful. So it's kind of interesting. It's almost like a vocabulary builder, or for them to really understand emotional words. So it's a fun place to take the kids to.
Yeah.
And helps them.
And it helps them really recognize that faces change when they're feeling different things, and that you can use those facial changes to express so much more outside of the words. You don't have to use words, you can just use visuals.
And we're almost done.
And then this is some of their work. They really enjoyed it. As we've grown with this program, with our unit, I've done a lot of work with Scott McCloud's books and really helped the kids start to change the way their panels look, to really focus on the visual piece of it and to really use the visual elements, so foreground and background and close-ups and partial faces. And so later on, I'll show you, Josh has them, there's some images of kids' work that's more new, and as I've grown as a teacher, and that's basically Josh's question, is how has it changed my practice? As I've learned more about the graphic novel, and I've learned more about how kids understand and how they work within the process of understanding graphic novels, my whole practice has changed and really embraced visuals in a much more clear way than just the text and visuals.
Okay. Well, we have like 10 more questions to get to.
Yeah.
So,
I don't have to use mine at all. Like mine is basically embedded in
Oh, you
hers.
mentioned that.
So yeah, it doesn't
cool.
matter. Yeah, you can.
It'll go faster
you can
now, Josh,
skip.
because this is just basically so everybody
Oh, these are
understood where we're
beautiful.
coming from.
And the entire books are on our website, but it's not accessible through outside. The school is hiding, but it's okay. But it's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So preview. Does anybody know how to make this go full screen?
Don't go to view. Can you make
there's
it
view.
full screen?
Yeah, thank you.
I don't. Yeah, you can do it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And hey, so I'll go over what I do really briefly, or I might just let you get more of an idea as the panel goes on. I'm Josh Baer. I teach at a lot of different schools with a lot of different populations, and I'm working at a charter school this year in Williamsburg. I work at with some more affluent kids at the 92nd Street Y. I work with special needs adults, which I feel it's not kids art, but it's people who have a non-traditional approach to the subject matter. So the two of them dovetail together. And I feel like one of my best friends who also helps me teach sometimes, Jude Killery, he once said to me that like he thinks that comics are just such a good fit for kids. And I think that the way that we tend to think as adults and as kids, if you think about the way that you're experiencing the information that you're having now, you're getting now from this panel, I mean, how are you thinking about it? Is it a row of words going by in your head? Are you looking at this image that I'm holding up? Are you picturing what I look like behind the screen? Are you thinking about those two things, the verbal element and the visual element, and on the side and peripherally, you're thinking about what you're going to have for lunch and something that happened 20 years ago. So the way that we experience, the way our thoughts work, the way our brains work, it's a really good fit for comics. And it's just as profound for a kid to use it, and it's sort of a level. There's a leveling of a playing field that happens, I think, and as a result, I find strategies with my kids' art all the time that are things that they encourage me, that change the way that I work. So I wanted to ask you guys, I'll go through these as you're talking, but I wanted to ask you guys, let's see, what's my next question? If you would want, I've also experienced it with kids. There are sometimes when the kids, they need an approach that I can't provide. I'm learning on the job how to teach. So I'm always, I get good feedback from my staff, but I will hit blind alleys where what I'm telling the kid does not work for what it would work for an adult doesn't work for the kid, and I need to regroup and try a whole different strategy. So this semester, for example, this comic is turning out really beautifully. This was a very simple change I made, that I started giving them pre-ruled paper. Everything else, I still feel like they're doing everything else on their own. I like the kids to learn how to do text by hand. This student, her handwriting is probably her weakest point. So I don't know if it's in here, but in some of the pages, I would have her write stuff and then glue it back over her already penciled stuff to keep it penciled text balloons to keep it clear. Stuff like that. What kind of, so I've had issues with sloppiness, I've had issues with lack of detail, I've had issues with people not doing enough text, or thinking that they're communicating but still being too much in their own head to realize the point isn't getting across. Mm-hmm. So this kid, if you read the top frame, it says, in his new regeneration, he goes through a process of incontrollable transformation for a period of time. Now, this is my lettering, but those are his words. He told me what was going on in the frame, and he didn't write any of this down because it's there's 50 consonants in here. So that's one of the struggles I've had, and that's one of the ways that I have tried to find work around it, is just pushing harder, getting them to articulate more, and sometimes getting it, rolling up my sleeve and doing the lettering for him. So what about you guys? What are some, and I'm sure, John, like what you've described, I'm sure you've had some kids, you said you've had 25% students who have art fear. What kind of resistance have you had? What kind of challenges have you had that are particular to the population that you work with? And how have you either worked through it or failed to work through it?
A big part of teaching is just learning to know your audience. Just because you're a good artist, it doesn't mean you can teach kids. You have to be able to speak on a level that they can understand. One thing that I always know about my kids, if I talk for more than 8 minutes, I've lost them. So at the beginning of class, I start to tell them what we're gonna do, and I break it down to a simple sentence, what we're doing today. I give them inspiration and visuals, then they start to, and then I give them the first example, and then they start. And then halfway through the class, I'll come back and Mejias is gonna talk again, and then we'll have to talk some more. Rough drafts, they hate. They wanna have it done, right, the first time. This is it, this is the project. No, I don't wanna do it again. Well, this is the rough draft. So there's a lot of back and forth with that, but knowing your audience and keeping things moving between boring Mejias talking and getting their hands busy, just going between those two things is the key.
Well, as far as students in the classroom, I would agree getting them to pen and paper very quickly is really important, and giving them plenty of opportunity to experiment before they go to that final process, because John's 100% right. When they get to those final panels or when they start really putting it in, they really want to have it done. So one of the things that I do is I have the kids start in pencil, and we do this whole drawing with using shapes first, and where they're doing a lot of erasing, and so, shapes of heads and fun shapes of heads when we're playing around. And then they do some erasing, and so they start with pencil first and then ink in on top of it. So that really helps to overcome some of their anxiety, and also their resistance to trying things again.
And one of the things, I'm not a classroom teacher, I'm a librarian, but I do still do projects. Like we make book trailers and stuff like with iMovie. So, you think about it, like the kids, they have 5 frames and they think they're done. Same thing. And then I think one of the things I do is I ask questions. I actually ask them to evaluate their own thing. I basically ask, like, what did you try to say? Do you think this actually said what you were trying to say? So you want them to come up with their own solution. Then if they come up with their own solution, they're more likely to work on it. If you just say, you point out, like, you missed 3 frames, now go work on 3 frames, they're not going to want to do that, right? Because then it's being told what to do, right, other than coming up with their own
And when
idea.
their peers notice it too, that's even more powerful. So I do a lot of peer groupings where they'll work together and look at each other's penciled sketches and then say, oh, you need something in the background here, or your text is really smushed here, maybe you need to make this into 2 panels, or have you tried a close-up here? And the cool thing is when the kids are learning from each other, as Roxanne's saying, it's so much more powerful than if I were to tell them, because I'm just another adult.
I've also found that a lot of, like, going through some of this work here, I'm reminded of what a strong emotional content much of this work has. Like, we just had the image of the parent dressed in, like, military gear with a gun saying, "Move out, time to move out, son." Do you believe in comics as a role? It's like an image of, it talks about so much. It's like here's a kid who's becoming a teenager, and they're looking down the line, and the world right now can be a really threatening place, especially economically, job market. The idea of being forced to go fend for yourself is like can be really threatening. How do you feel about comics as something that can be used to sort of encourage? Can be something that, how did I put it in my notes, excuse me? Emotionally, something that through which the kids can work out their emotional health. Anybody?
I did this project where the kids had to make a zine about what they were worried about. And the rules were they had to talk and draw about something that they were worried about, obviously, and that there were no rules and they weren't going to get in trouble no matter what happened. And every classroom, there's a kid who's got their hood on their head and they don't want to be seen. They're just kind of. And they told me the most amazing things. They had a whole conversation with me that without that project, they wouldn't have had at all. They were able to tell me all about their personal life just through art and writing. Spiders were a big winner. A lot of them were worried about spiders, but then also their parents dying. One of them was worried about that they were going to get accused of rape, which is on many levels a very serious, scary, crazy thing. It was a very successful project.
Like I said before when I was presenting, the social emotional piece is a real big part of this. As kids start to notice more about, how to draw a house, or gallows was one of the things they learned how to draw a wheelbarrow. They're also trying to draw people's faces and their facial expressions and really unpacking the emotions behind words or the emotions behind a situation. And so much came out in a more, academic or, more meta way about facial expressions and actions and also physical stances when they're drawing. I've also done work because, I'm a 5th grade teacher, so I'm able to incorporate drawing into many different ways and storytelling and visual storytelling. So I've also done more personal storytelling with the kids. So there's this really great book, 99 Ways to, no, not 99 Ways, it's
99 Ways to Tell a Story.
which is a great, and I love that one. That's a different lesson. But there's also one, the best books told in 3 panels or something like that. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's really cool. So they take like the Bible, or they take all these tomes, Don Quixote, and the illustrator brings it to 3 panels, basically beginning, middle, and end. And I've had the kids do that with situations in their life, like social emotional situations or friendship situations, and really distill them down to the 3 most essential pieces. And what's really cool is it allows for a lot of self-reflection, not just in a text way, like a diary way, but also seeing where people are in an argument about friends or something. And so it really helps them reflect in not just a cerebral way, but also a very geographic way. It's very grounded in a geography and a place and a time. And that's really cool.
I don't have to respond to this.
And this kind of dovetails into another question, talking about using comics as an emotional conduit. And I also have had a lot of, you've seen some of it here. A lot of it is the imagery that comes out of my classes is just completely, some of it's touching, some of it's completely bananas, some of it, and a lot of it is has a violence level that you might see in a video game or something. So have you, that's very common. And I think that's healthy, and luckily my teacher, the staff I work with has been really encouraging about, if they want to express their fears and their anxieties by having a character, a superhero rip off somebody's head and throw it to a pool of sharks, my staff is into that. They're like, that's great, that's like crazy dreamlike images, which could be loaded in this climate where people can be very sensitive about kids depicting violent imagery. At the same time, sexual imagery is going to remain, rated R imagery is going to, of a sexual nature, is going to remain off of the page, especially at the charter school. And that might seem like a double standard, like it's okay to do violence but not portray sex, but that's just the way it is. I'm sure as adults and people have to, be an authority or used to saying that's just the way it is. It's a still school. And that's how I've dealt with it in the past. So I have warned students about taking stuff in certain directions, and they usually know. They know when they're usually ahead of me on that. But I still do appreciate seeing some of the really, so I don't like having to have them censor themselves too much. So I wanted to ask you guys how you've dealt with that, how you've dealt with the situation of, has the issue of censorship come up in your classroom?
Maybe I can respond to this one a little bit before they did, because I'm a middle school librarian, and my middle school is kind of weird because it's from 4th grade through 8th grade, which you can see the spectrum is really wide, right? So you have some of them coming to me are 8-year-olds, but some of them are graduating from me are 14-year-olds, and they have the same space, the same middle school collection. So collecting graphic novel has been a challenge for me because I basically can't collect things beyond a 6th grade level because it's so easily you can open it's different from text, from books with text. Like you may have certain books that my 5th graders are reading that has a little bit of, mentioning of sex or quite a bit of violence like Hunger Games and stuff. But if you collect all of that so it's easily accessible to 4th and 5th graders, and they can bring it home and open to whatever page where you have people, doing something on the page. Yeah, Henry's not listening to this right now. And that just becomes very tricky.
Yeah.
So I've been very covert about some of I love Chew. I don't know whether people in the audience know. I love Chew, which is so violent. They're also like sexual content. I keep a collection of more higher end, more questionable things just behind my desk. And they are kids that I know who are mature enough, usually after 6th grade, who can handle this. We actually have a little graphic novel club, and we read Y, we read, Saga, we read Walking Dead. But in a way that I can slightly control. So I don't have some kids who just like, 5th grade bring back Walking Dead. I say, Mrs. Feldman recommended this for me. So I think the double standard definitely exists, and I think, unfortunately, I go along with that. Like, even in the regular text collection, I have Hunger Games, not in the young adult, but I can have Boy Meets Boy by David Levinson or other very explicit LGBTQ kind of collection for the lower. So, yeah, that's my response to yours.
Interesting.
Do you want to go, John?
Sure. It's a weird gray area of what you let them do. They love violence. They love to be shocking. They love to shock each other and just to keep pushing it further. Sometimes I'll make the announcement, keep it PG, everybody, before, because it starts to get out of control. I do have a little collection of penis drawings, at home that I've gotten from them, Well, they'll throw it on the ground and keep that for later because it's hysterical. But on the same way, it can get very serious, and I have had students make pictures of killing themselves, and that's very serious, and they don't even realize that they're reaching out sometimes. So you have to bring in the guidance counselor and be aware of when it's silly or when it's very serious.
Right. I would agree. I think being able to know your students well enough that you know when something is off and when something is just being playful. I think that's a huge part. I mean, that's a huge part of teaching in general, whether you're new to teaching or, been teaching for 20 years. You really want to know your students. The curriculum, yes, is wonderful, but knowing your students and knowing why they're doing whatever they might be doing is really important. And I'm, a mom of a 10-year-old boy, and he draws all kinds of crazy, violent things. And I mean, I think it's knowing when that violence is a call for help or when that it is just playing with ideas and seeing what it looks like to draw a decapitated head dripping blood. Like, I think there's a lot of flexibility that needs, I don't think there are any hard, fast rules. And I think always breaking that fourth wall and feeling free to talk to a kid about what they're drawing. Like, hey, what was going on here? Because what kids, I think, don't understand is that, perception, people make a lot of assumptions about drawings about, and I think that's the cool thing about fifth grade is that kids are starting to realize that they have a reputation, that all of a sudden people perceive them in a way that they don't perceive themselves. And so helping to bring in that kind of, unpack whatever it is that they're drawing, like, somebody might see this and think something, and that may not be where their head is at all if they're drawing somebody getting shot, or even drawing themselves getting shot. But having those conversations. I have a student who on his desk, he has his little label, and on it is a gun. And I didn't actually think anything of it. And one of my fellow teachers came in and was like, "Wow, what do you think of that, Tracy?" It's like, honestly, not very much. I said, it's all contextual. I don't have a lot of kids drawing any kind of sexualized drawings at this point. But I would like to think that I would start to think of it in a very similar way. I look at my homeroom and my kids as a house, and that's what we call it at the school. And it's a very, it's a place where I want my kids to take risks and where I want them to be themselves. And drawing is just another way for them to do that.
So let's talk also about, we have like 12 minutes left, and let's talk a little bit about how you talked a little already about how you organize the class. I'd like to hear from John on that and talk a little bit about how I do that, and then also talk about, that should dovetail into what you want to do next, like what projects are germinating inside of you that you want to give to your students. And I want to show a little bit more of my work. This girl is so great. I might need to. Yeah, it's so good. Slava. Hi, I'm Panda. My daddy's chasing me. Bye. Come here. Hopefully, Daddy won't find me here. Daddy won't find me here. Come here. Bye bye. Thank you very much. I got it. I will go to heaven. Daddy won't find me there. Bye. And what's she saying there? Star so big, I see the moon. I'm here, but my ship crashed. Wah, wah. Wait a second, W-A-T-E. This is a cool moon. I can go fishing, parachuting, and pumpkin picking, and get a job, and go ghost hunting, and I can so make I can't read that. A jack-o'-lantern. This was around Halloween. What should I do first? What? I go to the pumpkin patch first. I will go fishing next. This is awesome. Hi, Panda, hi. I can fish. I love my new fishing hat. Baby Panda is awesome. I mean, this is somebody who I just couldn't even tell her how to draw. She just went for it, and she was such a great kid who had been nurtured by her parents. This is a third school I didn't mention. I work at Bird River Studios on Wednesdays, and I just teach a bunch of parents who live in Williamsburg, all varying degrees of success. It's really interesting when I talk to kids from 92nd Street Y or Bird River. When I start talking to them about TV and movies, they've all watched their favorite shows are like Breaking Bad. And when I talk to the kids from the collegiate school, where it's a little bit more, they're a little bit more lower working class. They're all it's not kid appropriate, but it's not adult shows. And I asked one of the kids once about, I can't remember what show came up, but they were all talking about, they might watch cable TV like Walking Dead, but at least that's a genre show. It makes sense for a kid to be more sense for a kid to be watching that than it would another show. And one of the kid goes, "Well, I'm Dominican. My parents would kill me if I watched a show like that." So that was kind of eye-opening for me. Okay, I don't want to read all of these. Anyways, so this is a kid who I didn't need to show much. I think I showed her how to draw a bed right here from the above view because she makes everything flat. But she usually, what I found for the semester that I'm at now, I have a system that works for me where I give the first assignment is you introduce your character. And that's why a lot of these, especially earlier, there's a lot of shots of people with all these heads behind them. I asked them to introduce your character, give them a nice big logo at the top of the frame, and I want it to be a detailed background. So it's either they're on a ground, they're on a ground plane that has cracks or grass or bushes or rocks all over it. And if you guys want, you can do them walking on people's heads, and that will give you a chance to learn how to draw a crowd, which will come in handy later, and it gets them to deal with foreground, middle ground, background. So this is another example of it. He did this pattern on the ground, and this is in pencil, and that's me teaching the class how to do the head assignment. So and then one kid was like, "Can it work for craters on the moon?" And I'm like, "Absolutely. There's the craters." And then I also talked to them about patterns. So I talked to them about all the different patterns you can use, and that's at the beginning. And I talked to them also, believe it or not, a lot about pant cuffs and shirt cuffs and shirt hems and belts, and all these things that make all the characters different from one another. So they do an introduction comic, and then I go, just have them do something, show what they do every day, and that's that's in the here and now. Second assignment is do the same character in the past, now they do them in the future. And then as they're working through this, they work on it a little bit every day, and I come in and I'll give them a different lesson. Like the lesson here was about doing letters. And I actually got this kind of 1 point perspective thing. I heard one of the kids mention that their other teacher had done it. So I had a different way of teaching how to do three-dimensional letters, and I just kept my ears open, and now I'm using this all the time. It's good. And I'm using this for adults too. This is a really good trick. It's taking all the lines to one point. So the next assignment is, here's another, this is exactly what I'm talking about. She has Cyberwoman at the top, she's standing on all their heads, and then you go into the story. So then I have them do a story about the past. So what was Cyberwoman's past? What is Baby Panda's past? Well, Baby Panda doesn't have much of a past, but tiny Baby Panda. And then what's her future? I'd love to see where this kid would take a story of Baby Panda's future. And then the second assignment, once they deal with this, because what I'm describing is probably 2.5 months of work, an hour, 3 hours a week. The next assignment is a boogeyman assignment. So that's something that I'm just getting into, and that would be the next thing I'm doing. Sorry, I took up a lot of time with that. What about you guys? How do you organize your classes, John?
Classes are, first of all, dependent on what I have for art supplies, so it kind of fluctuates on how the budget's looking that week. We start with a conversation and with a lot of open-ended questions, meaning the answer doesn't always come from me and from my examples, but the open-ended questions starts a conversation with them about what their art should look like. We have a lot of freedom to experiment, and we usually close with, I guess you could call it a critique on a very low level. I don't just teach comics though, we do sculpture and painting and everything else. But in a nutshell, that's what's happening. And again, I think my job is to ask them questions that they have their own answer to. And sorry that I'm a hippie, but just to inspire them. That's just my job.
And what haven't you done that you want to do? What's next that's germinating?
We're gonna make some kites, but I have to make one myself to make sure I can do it before I teach it to them. So that's my big plan in the future.
Well, I just was promoted at my school, so I'm now going to be the assistant director of the middle school, and I'm really excited about that because what I'd like to do next is start to really articulate a visual literacy or a visual learning curriculum and start to really, throughout the grades, start to take visuals and the meaning behind those visuals in a very serious way, and to start to rethink the way we teach. So Dan Music, the man I spoke about before, he's doing something really cool right now at our school where he is starting to teach many of the things that we all learned in a very dry way, like finding the theme of a story or writing a thesis sentence. And he's starting to use visuals. And he's actually teaching all of that in using software that's kind of like Khan Academy-esque, but he's doing it all with drawing and all with icons and and symbols. And it's really cool where he's going with it. And I would love to start to have other teachers and to do some professional development with many of the teachers at the school to start to really think and have teachers reflect on their practice and how we can bring visuals and really marry text and visuals in a more thoughtful way as professionals. And so again, taking that whole idea of comics, text and visuals that are inseparable from each other, and translating that into educational philosophy.
And my always evil plan is to keep getting more books for teachers to read that they will really appreciate. I run teachers book club, and I always throw in quite a few. Graphic novels, Boxer and Saints were very well received, even in the high school level. So the high school teachers are also thinking of using this kind of art form to teach in their classroom in English and in history. And I was just inspired. Can I have that? So this could be my next thing with my origami kids, because I also do origami. If you go upstairs, this is the guy who's selling origami graphic novels that you fold it into a box and you can read them in 3-dimensional form. So I don't know what I'm going to use with it, but it's going to go somewhere. So that'll be fun.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right, great. I think they're going to kick us out. Yeah, so thank you so much for attending, everybody.
Sorry for no questions and answers.
And thanks to everybody for participating.
you.
I thought this was great. I mean, I feel like...
I learned
Thanks,
so
Josh.
much. This is great.
Yeah, I feel like, we kind of represent, like, a full spectrum of how to approach it. You guys are so organized, and, like, I feel like you kind of have more of, like, a rock and roll approach. And I think both are necessary.
I agree.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much.